What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Scotch and Dumplings podcast. Today I'm here with my good friend Vincent, but you may know him as Lektrique.
Hi Spencer. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. How have you been, dude? It's been a while since I've seen you. I know you got married, you moved into a new house, you have your fabulous dog Monkey there.
It's been amazing, honestly. It was a bit of a rough period in the beginning of COVID when everything locked down, and we were in a big penthouse, the one that you visited, with too many roommates that didn't really. I mean, I would say they weren't really taking it seriously, but also their job didn't allow for them to really distance themselves from the potential risks. Like a lot
Yeah.
of them were working in Horeca. In Dutch, we say horeca, which is hotels, restaurants, and cafes. But I don't know if there's
Okay.
a term for that in English.
Oh, hospitality. Yeah.
Yeah, they work in hospitality. Yeah, so they're obviously at risk. And given that my wife has some underlying health conditions that could potentially be really dangerous if she were to contract the virus, we were really
Worried about
scared
that.
and
Yeah.
worried and like taking any precaution we could. So essentially, for the first like 4 or 5 months of COVID, we were just staying with friends and like going between our friends' houses, trying to stay away from our place because we couldn't really ask our roommates, no, you can't go to work. Because,
Yeah.
yeah.
You got to make money.
Yeah, so it was tricky, and it was definitely a strain on our our work. I couldn't really produce because I didn't have a studio. I was trying to do as much as I could from my laptop. But when you're uncomfortable and you're really worried and you're stressed, you're not really in a creative space. So I didn't get to make much, although I've been working for a very long time on a new project that will be unveiled in sometime in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's hard, like trying to keep your wife safe, but like also trying to focus on work and like, because you were living with Val or Virtual Riot for a while, right?
Well, we were just staying at his place. We weren't like officially living there or whatever, but
Okay.
he was hosting us for uh, what must have been like a month or 2 months in total. We were kind of going back and forth between his house and then our friend Corey, who lives with us now.
Okay.
So we moved with Coco, his girlfriend, and then Coco's roommate at the time, Ben, and his girlfriend, and my wife and I. And then we have another room where Val comes to stay from time to time because he's a really good friend, and we have a spare room that he shares that with another friend. So because they already have their own apartments, but they kind of live further away. So whenever they want
Right.
to come, yes, it's like a guest room
Hang
essentially.
out and produce or do whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's get into the music. You host Kannibalen Radio.
Yes, sir.
You do your own producing. What do you want to
Mm-hmm.
start with?
Um, I was just doing Kannibalen Radio yesterday, so I think with that on my mind, let's just dive into that first. So yeah, for I think must be like 6 years now or more. I can't tell anymore.
This is like a blur.
I've been doing Kannibalen Radio for quite a long time. We're at episode 178 right now, I think.
Damn, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's been every 2 weeks. We have a guest on, and I do my mix. Like I do a 15-minute intro mix with like all of my favorite new tunes, new music from our record label, Kannibalen Records. And then, interesting artists that we see fit are like lane of electronic music, which is a lot more like dirty, toward the heavy side, but not defined by genre, like not constrained by exclusively dubstep or
Right.
exclusively bass house or exclusively drum and bass. We try to like keep enough room for switching things up a little bit, but within that same energy,
Yeah, I mean,
always.
you guys have had some house guys and stuff on there too,
Oh
right?
yeah, lots. Yeah.
That's awesome. How did that come about? Like, were you approached
To do Kannibalen
to do
Radio?
it? Yeah.
No, I mean, I've been working with Kannibalen since the label started. So Kannibalen used to be just a bi-weekly or a monthly event in Montreal when I moved there. And then they posted something about, hey, we want to start a record label. If anybody's interested, please reach out. So I just messaged them and sent them my music, and we became close friends. And I introduced him to John Apache, who I had just met at the time in Montreal. He was there to study, and so was I at the time. And then Dabin was there from the beginning. Kaiwashi came in pretty soon after because he was in the States. You know, he wasn't living there, but it was a lot of fun to have like these people there and have this like motivation and creative momentum with the group. It's a lot easier to get the ball rolling. You know, you have instant feedback from your friends, and you're all kind of working towards the same goal. And especially with Black Tiger Sex Machines, eye for marketing and brand building, they really knew what they were going for. So for those that aren't familiar, Black Tiger Sex Machine, Julian, Mark, and Patrick, they all have a background in like business, marketing, branding, law in case of Julian. But
I did
yeah,
see that he had a background in law.
yeah. So that I mean, that does come in handy. They're all very business savvy, and they know how to build something like this. And it's been a wild journey doing this with them. You know, it's thanks to them that when my permit expired in Montreal in Canada, and I had to go back to Belgium, they were able to put me on their tour. So I was able to get an O1 visa to come live in the States for the last 3 years. And then when that permit expired, I was lucky enough to have found my wife. So now I can stay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm actually currently going through the whole green card application process. But it's looking pretty good. And I'm very hopeful now that Trump is no longer president, or soon to be no longer president.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I know we kind of talked about it in the past. We can talk about your producing background. How did you really get into that? I mean, did you start when you were young? You know, you went to
Yeah,
film school.
very young. Yeah, even way before that. I think I started making beats when I was 15 years old. My brother just showed me FL Studio, and I was like, "This is fun." I was at the time just starting to get into techno and like minimal techno, and then Fidget House became a thing very quickly, and like Blog House, and that was a lot of where my inspiration was coming from and my drive. I was making music, but I really had no clue what I was doing, just like turning buttons and making sounds, you know. I would have loved at that time to have something like the platform that I teach for right now. Um, like I mentioned before, I teach on this online platform on Facebook right now. It's called Defyre Society, DEFYRE Society. And it's like this pretty tight roster of bass producers. If you go on the website, it's pretty incredible, the people that are teaching on there. So essentially what they do, they have this whole database of tutorials available for anyone that subscribes, but also live feedback the entire week long. They have these slots. So there's a roster. For example, I'm Mondays at 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. You can submit your songs, and there's like 15 slots per slot, per 15 submission per slot. And then I just give you my live feedback. If you want, you can follow. It's on Facebook. You can just tune in, and that's like a really nice way that I'm able to like give back to the electronic music scene and help people figure out the stuff. Aside from that, I've also been doing a lot of one-on-one teaching. So through Zoom, just helping people out with their projects. It can literally be anything what they want to learn about. Usually I ask people to just send me their music, and I assess like where they're lacking the most and where I can help them best. So if that is mixing, then it's mixing, mastering, sound design. I've been getting, it's really rewarding for me to help people like achieve or like reach for their goals, and see how I can help them do that. But now yeah, just to tie things together, I really wish that I had something like that when I was starting out, because I had no clue and I was just like scattering around the internet trying to figure shit out. And it was very overwhelming and difficult at the time because, 2015, there wasn't
Right.
any like online courses about. It took me the
It's all like
longest time to,
self-taught.
yeah, a lot of like trial and error. And then eventually I went to film school in Belgium. That was helpful. It taught me a lot about recording quality and signal, things like that. I did that for 2 years, and then I moved to Montreal to study there, and that's how everything started with Kannibalen. But film school in Montreal is where I really learned a lot about like audio recording and sound manipulation. I also did a synthesis course there, sound design. So I learned like about FM and about all other types of synthesis that I didn't know about yet at the time. It was pretty like overall the program is very basic, but I think it was still really helpful to like refresh those things that weren't like super clear in my mind yet, and also like really solidifying it as matter that I can like material that I can teach now as well.
Right. So is it a class by class basis for you, or do you just sign someone up for like a 4 week course or?
So as of now, it's a one class basis. I ask my students to reach out as soon as they have enough material to like talk about, or if they have, it's not cheap. I do charge like $100 per hour. But right now I'm currently in the process of completely overhauling that business model and making it a lot more like I'm going to be making these bundles that I can sell for cheaper. So I can help more people at the same time. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be doing one-on-one classes anymore. It's just that right now it's taking so much of my time, and it like the time versus like the profit that I'm making off of it is like it's not really. I mean, it's sustainable barely, but it's a lot better of a business model to
Right.
like make these classes and then just sell them to the people that need to know, that need to learn that specific thing. I'm going to be focusing a lot around like theoretical approaches like first, because I noticed that a lot of people, they're really not familiar with the basics of audio, like phase relationship and like the nature of sound and acoustics and things like that. People that it's not important to them because they're not running into those problems right away, but they are affecting their production quality so greatly, and people are like not understanding why does this sound this way, why when I layer my snare drums do they sound like ass. These are the kind of like things that you would understand if you would have taken that class, and I think I like to start off teaching people these things because it saves you so much time if you're aware of these problems and the relationship of sound in general, that is going to just make it so much easier for you to make a good song if you anticipate these problems. Yeah.
That's really cool because like I have no grasp on those concepts because I'm completely self-taught, and like I'm starting to understand workflow and arrangement and stuff, and like it's
Mm-hmm.
helpful, but like I never would have thought to think about those things, and
Mm-hmm.
that's super cool that you're able to bring that to the table.
Yeah, it always fascinated me, how sound really works. Because people are like, oh, it's just sound, you just hear it. But what is it really? How does it work in the air, and how does it interact? How does sound like? How does your left speaker interact with your right speaker? Like understanding the difference between what mono and stereo really is, and then how you can use that in a creative way and in a way to essentially like keep your productions clean and keep everything hitting much more prominently versus making a track that sounds like the composition is really good and the mix is great, but there's something about how it's not really communicating fully the presence that the song should have. And that's often as a result of just phase relationship between your specific elements and how everything is placed in like the stereo field. Yeah.
That's so cool. And I also think that's awesome that you're able to give back to people, you know, and like have these resources for people that are just starting out. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when you didn't, I mean, I know I'm personally figuring out that like having all these connections and like all these people that are willing to help you is like so rare because, you know, if you don't have that, it just makes it that much more difficult. And like,
It
I'm
is.
so thankful because a lot of our way has already been paved and, you know, just by having that, but at the same time, you're able to make a sustainable living and, you know, keep giving back through that,
Mm-hmm.
through these
Yeah.
classes.
Yeah, exactly. And the goal is also, so if I make all of that into these pre-packaged bundles, I can help more people at the same time, and I don't have to spend as much time, you know, being hands-on all the time helping people. Um, that doesn't mean that, you know, I'm not going to be interacting with people anymore. You know, obviously I'm still going to be following up on people's questions. There's definitely going to be some confusion that comes with not having the class done live, so you can ask questions as they arise. So I'm still working out those kinks and setting up like a platform where I can bundle those things up. But also I want to look more into like selling people templates that are going to be useful specifically for what they're trying to make. If you're trying to get into vocal recording, like I know all the fucking great tools and easy to use tools for people that are just starting out, you know, getting them through that process in a way that doesn't take an entire course, for example, to get started, but so people can just like get the ball rolling. And you know, the more that I have all of that bundle and all of that platform set up, the more that I can also now focus again on making what I want to make. You know.
I know this could be like a pretty broad question, but how did you find your sound? Did you just like know one day or like,
I don't really believe in finding your sound. It's just something that you do over time. It's just you use the instruments that you like, you use the plugins that you like, and you make the sounds that you like. And over time, by doing that enough times, you just narrow things down to your favorites, and that kind of sculpts what your sound sounds like. Obviously, you need to be a little bit aware of like, I'm making house music now. Um, that does come into play, obviously, but it's also a lot about the kind of keys that you're using, the modes and keys in your composition, because they convey a lot of the emotional energy and the message behind your music. So if you can keep that somewhat, what's the word? Um,
like organized?
yeah, but consistent.
Consistent. Okay.
Yeah, if you can keep that consistent, is going to convey the message a lot easier. He's being a squirmy baby in that.
Bye, monkey. Is there a certain key that you mainly produce in or like producing in?
Well, it's usually always minor most of the time, and I like to stick around like D sharp, E, and D. But in terms of mode, it's like I wasn't even aware of it at the time, but I would always make music in this like Locrian or what is this medieval sounding mode. Um, I can't remember what it's called anymore right now. But it's essentially just the relationship between the notes in that key. Like there's always that the sharp right before your tonic that I love playing with, and that always like it'll give you the same kind of energy and emotional message every time you use it that way. You know, regardless of the key, if it's that mode, it'll still be within that like that tone. So that's like a really helpful tool if you're trying to like consciously make a decision about, hey, this I'm trying to like make my sound, like find the mode that really resonates with you and your message, and that's like an easy way to accomplish that.
Right. So what are your, if you had to pick three, what are your top three favorite plugins, regardless of skill level, just
Um,
your favorite?
like my most like my most used plugin is
Sure.
definitely FabFilter Pro Q3, because it's so easy to use. You just like click on it, you have like your notes just appear right away. But then also it's dynamic. So whenever I'm like, my kick drum doesn't hit hard enough, I don't need to go grab a compressor to do it. I just do like an upwards compression bump specifically around those frequencies. Or if something is too dynamic in a specific frequency range, you can do it all within that one plugin, which is absolutely incredible. I use it for mixing, mastering, sculpting, everything. And then other than that, I would say Soothe 2, which is fairly new, but it's a spectral shaper. So similar reasons as why I like Pro Q3. Initially, they designed Soothe as like an advanced de-esser. It's like, I don't know how many bands it has exactly, but it seems like infinite bands. So you can go up to a specific frequency and you can adjust how much dynamics that specific frequency bump or frequency range has, but then you can do that differently for each part of the frequency spectrum. But now within Soothe 2, you can also sidechain elements to each other within the spectral content. So if you say like, hey, my vocal isn't cutting enough through my mix, you can be like, oh, I want to sidechain my vocal to my bass line, but not the entire bass line, only the frequencies that my vocal is actually using. And not necessarily all frequencies, but mostly the ones where the masking is the most problematic. So where the overlap lies. And you have so much control within that, like the attack and release and it's beautiful. Yeah. That's really like the future. Like it's like artificial intelligent plugins that really make your life a lot easier. Other than that, a third one. I mean, I should pick one that's more like on the creative side. For people that haven't heard of XO, that is a big game changer as well. It's a plugin by XLN Audio, the same guys that make Addictive Keys and Addictive Drums. They've created this artificially intelligent drum library where you feed it your entire sample library. It organizes it for you on this color map. And based on the tonality and spectral content, it'll show in specific color. So you can see all your kick drums in red, all your snare drums in blue, and obviously where the red and blue connect to each other, you'll have snare drums that sound more like kick drums and kick drums that sound more like snare drums because they're adjacent. And then you have basically everything. So claps, hi-hats, cymbals, everything. And then within that, it's not just selection. You also have a sequencer that has all the things you might want, like velocity, sensitivity, swing, pitch, ADSR envelopes, filters, reverb sends, bus compression. And the coolest thing about it is that as soon as you're finished with your drum beat, you can the exporting window is ridiculous. You have right there, you have the possibility to just grab the raw sample without anything on it, just like the way that it's in your sample library. Like you can like bulk export those, but you can also bulk export the processed sample, again, just one shot, or the processed beat per stem. So
wow, that's fucking insane.
And all just in one click, just drag and drop. It's just so convenient. It's like they thought of everything. Yeah.
Jeez, that's awesome. So my next question, do you have a favorite collab that you've made?
Ooh, that's difficult. There's so many collabs that I'm like really, really big fan of.
Do you have any with like a cool story attached to it? Or?
Yeah, usually, again, all of them. Like I always write music with a story behind it. And especially with collabs, that's very useful so that you're both on the same page, like writing to the same story, because if you're working with another person, it can be difficult to like sync up your goal for that song. So if you have a story that you can communicate to each other, it kind of makes things a lot easier because you're writing about the same topic. You're both going to be choosing samples that fit this story. I have this collab with Virtual Riot that's coming out that I'm super, super keen on right now. It's about this like underwater cyberpunk world. It was kind of based on this video game that he showed me. I don't remember the name, Aqua something. It's like this underwater shooter where you're like in these like futuristic submarines where the whole world is like flooded, and it feels like this. It's like it's kind of like Blade Runner but underwater.
Holy shit.
And there's like the aesthetic of like all these neon lights shining through the water. It's absolutely mad. But yeah, that's like what we wrote around. And I don't know if you're familiar with Carpenter Brut.
I don't think so.
So Carpenter Brut is this, I think it's a single producer, but they also have this like band set up, much like Bloody Beetroots does, where they play live. And Carpenter Brut has scored this short film for Seth Ickerman. It's called Blood Machines. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It looks like eye candy. It's so beautiful. So we saw that, and that kind of just like set the ball in motion, and that was a big part of the inspiration behind the whole like retro wave aesthetic of the song and the whole like cyberpunk feel to it. And that's something that we both really love and have in common in terms of like aesthetic and sonic landscape. So we really wanted that to be like a big part of it. And I think that definitely comes across. I think the release is planned around like end of December or something. We're finishing it up. It's pretty much done. We just need to like polish up the mix and the master, and then we'll be releasing it most likely with Disciple because Valentine.
Right. I absolutely cannot fucking wait to hear that. I'm so excited. It sounds so cool. So moving on, let's talk about a little bit about mental health, because I know as an artist, like personally, it's important to me. And no matter what kind of art you do, whether it's comedy, painting, dance, making music, all of that, it's, if you think you have, some sort of mental health capacity, and I think it's, a big part of people's lives, especially as an artist. So do you have any thoughts on mental health? Or
definitely. It's become painfully obvious how people weren't really paying attention to mental health before COVID. I mean, obviously I can't speak for everyone, but let's say as like a overall global awareness of how important it is to people. It feels like COVID has made it impossible to avoid it anymore because people are forced to be by themselves. They're forced to be isolated. They're forced to face their problems head on. And that can be scary to a lot of people. A lot of people were just distracting themselves, just like going out all the time, hanging out with friends, and not really dealing with their underlying issues that they've been just like suppressing and been kind of like dragging along for years and years. And it's pretty common that these issues that you accumulate over your life start to like bubble up towards your late 20s, early 30s. And we've been dealing with that a lot, and especially the house that I live in here and the friends that I've surrounded myself with, they're all very aware and open about that. And I think that's really important that you as well spend time to communicate about the underlying issues you've been dealing with, so you can process it and understand it and start to heal yourself and align yourself with what's important to you and how you're going to really fix these issues. Specifically, my wife, she's been suffering from complex PTSD from her upbringing, because her parents they had to flee from Vietnam during the war. So they had underlying trauma for many years. And trauma, if you don't process and heal it, it's something you pass on. because you're just reacting to impulses in a way that your body is just like defending itself. It's like your mind is like a fight or flight response, you know? So if you don't take the time to really learn to understand how you're reacting to these impulses, you're literally just going to pass it on to the people around you, to your kids, and that just keeps going. You know, there's trauma from like hundreds of years that's been passed on. Trauma is also something that stores itself in the body. So if you have any emotional turmoil from like 10, 20 years ago, it's possible that that's still stored in your body. So if you don't give the like self-love to your body to like, you know, care for yourself, I can recommend things like meditation, yoga, and things like that. That helps a lot. But these things, they stay there and they bubble up after many years. You might be like, that's all gone, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, maybe it's actually still there. So we've been dealing with a lot of that, and helping my wife to really overcome these underlying darkness inside of like the back of her mind, really. And you know, seeing some people, seeing some what's the word? I'm thinking psychiatrist, but
like therapy.
Yeah, therapy. Yeah,
okay.
Like therapists that can help, you know, with like hypnotherapy. Not everybody is able to use this. Like not everybody is as open to it. It's really about how open your mind is to that kind of therapy. It's like depends from person to person. Some people they can't get under hypnosis because their mind is too like aware that it's happening. You need to be able to like shut it off, essentially.
Right.
But it is super useful because you can essentially like make your subconscious aware of certain things, and awareness is literally it's everything. If you're aware that your mind is reacting to something because of previous trauma, because of how you have been suppressing something, you can decide to react to it in a different way if you're aware of it. If you're not aware, you're like an animal reacting to something. It's like, oh.
Right.
But if you're aware that something is there, you can process it and you can decide how you're going to react to something, even though there might be some underlying like emotional response. But the more you train that awareness, and easy ways to do that is through meditation, or at least that helps. It just makes you so much stronger tackling these problems in the future, and getting more control over how you feel day to day. Yeah.
Right. And then I think, you know, you did a great job at explaining like awareness of it and like addressing it. And then I think another important part is like learning to cope with it and like how you choose those reactions. I mean, I went through a breakup during COVID, and like I wasn't working, and I like spiraled so hard, and you know, I didn't know what to do, and like making music helped, and like, you know, doing video editing was like kind of cool. But for me, like I just started like working out super hard and eating a little bit cleaner and cutting out drinking, and I felt like phenomenally better.
Right, because the more you're taking care of your body, the more your body is also able to handle more of that like emotional burden and like mental stress. But if you're neglecting yourself, if you're not giving yourself that self-care, you're only going to be able to do that up until a certain point where your body just feels so shit, and that stress is just being built up that it's just going to fight back. Essentially, at some point your body's going to be like, you know, fuck you.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I mean, different things work for different people, you know, like, I mean,
certainly
yoga may work for you or for someone else and not work for me. Or so how do you cope with stress and, you know, mental health deficiencies?
Physical exercise for me is huge. Being in this house with some of my best friends, and working out with them has made it super good for me, because yeah, it's like an outlet, you know. If you let that stress out through something like, I've been boxing with my roommate Ben. We also have a pool, so we've been swimming a lot. I've been skateboarding all of my life, and that has kind of been my outlet, even though I wasn't fully aware of it for most of my life. That was definitely helping me. You know, if you have an outlet, like a physical outlet to like release stress, that can be many things, you know, but that is the most important thing. And if you can combine that with something like meditation to increase awareness of what your brain is really doing and how you're feeling, and just being aware of, you know, certain pains and thoughts that you keep having, and then just kind of logging that, it just makes you so much more ready to tackle problems when they come back. You know, when you're dealing with a backlash, or you're dealing with some kind of setback that you need to process. It's if you don't have an outlet, it just builds up essentially. Yeah.
Right. I feel like you really hit the nail on the head on explaining the whole mental health
Yeah.
thing. That was perfect. Yeah. So we're kind of getting towards the end here. Do you have any like tips for people like starting out in anything creative? Honestly, not even just music, like, you know, tips for like staying organized or staying motivated, or, you know, how to like get over those first obstacles.
Um, you know, I've been talking with Crywolf, Justin, a little bit about the creative process. He's actually, he teaches a master class about this, and his perspective on this has been really enlightening for me as well. He kind of split up the creative process in this like procedure or protocol where it's literally like you impregnate your mind with the like the whole like the first stage is usually like again, I haven't watched the whole masterclass, so I recommend, if you're interested, you go do that. But it comes down to this, like you do this first phase of research and just like absorbing as much information about what inspires you. Don't try to just like go make music, because you don't have that like material to draw from. First, you need to make this like world essentially in your mind that you can draw inspiration from. And that can be just like watching specific movies or series or reading books, whatever inspires you, whatever you feel like makes you feel alive, or makes you feel like something you really deeply care about. Do that and collect as much of it as possible. Try and like categorize it. If you're a music producer, that means like saving specific samples that fit that world, or saving specific songs, just like all cataloging it and storing it. Same thing with movies and series and art, visual art. And then when you feel ready, like doing that for a week, essentially feel ready, then basically doing like a song a day, or a picture a day, or whatever kind of art you're trying to create, right? Like basically just letting it all out and not spending too much time on it trying to like perfect it. Just like a song a day. If the song isn't finished, don't worry about it. You can come back to it later. But the idea is just like unload all of that like stored up creativity and just like letting it roll. And the more you get your brain in that process of like letting it, like it's like creative diarrhea. It's just like blah, it's like coming all out. And then after that week, going back and seeing like these are the best ideas, these are worth like spending more time on. It's so much more of a optimal process than like trying to make one song and like working super hard to make it good, when you could have like 15 song ideas and 3 or 4 of them which are really good, you know.
And try not to like force it.
Yes, exactly. If you do the process properly of like really taking the time to let yourself be inspired, you should be able to make a song a day. And it doesn't matter if it's not a good song, you know. You shouldn't be like, oh, today I made a song, but it's like not a good song. It doesn't matter, because it's about getting in that getting in that process, getting your mind in that state where you're really just unleashing creativity. And to make it simple, make yourself a template. If you're a music producer or even any kind of art, you can make yourself a template. Limit yourself to specific tools for songwriting or for creation of any kind.
Cool.
To not distract yourself. Yeah, because I have a hard time with that, man. Very easily distracted by
everything. Yeah, I mean, honestly, me too.
Everything and anything.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on. It was good to catch up with you. I feel like I've been seeing you forever. So
it has been.
Is there anything you want to plug? Upcoming releases, recent releases, your class, your socials?
If anybody is interested, I'm still doing a whole bunch of one-on-one classes right now, and I will continue to do so, probably less in the future because of the transition. They can hit me up either on Instagram at Lektrique or professorlektrique@gmail.com. That's something I made for the classes. And if people are interested in my music, I just released a single on Night Mode. It's called Carmageddon. It was inspired by one of my favorite video games growing up. And then just released a tune with Wednesday called Break on Kannibalen. And then watch out for the upcoming Virtual Ride collab. It's gonna
awesome.
Heavy hitter.
Cool. Well, it was good talking to you, brother, and I hope to see you soon.
Likewise.